Have you ever wondered why softboxes come in so many different shapes and sizes? That's what I'm going to tell you today. I'm going to explain the reasons why. I'm also going to talk about flash triggers, about how we trigger our flash in synchronization with our camera. There are a number of different ways that you can do that, and I'm going to explain that to you as well. This is the third in our series on softboxes. The next one we're going to be shooting outside with softboxes, but we've run through a whole range of different things about softboxes in the first two videos, so go and have a look at them if you've missed them. All right, here we go. The reason why there are so many different sizes and shapes of softboxes is primarily to attract photographers to buy more. Actually, in my opinion, most of them give you very similar light. There are subtle differences between the different shapes and sizes. Obviously, a larger softbox is going to give you softer light for the same light to subject distance, but the different shapes really don't make a lot of difference. I've seen photographers say I like square softboxes because I want a square catch light in my model's eye. I like round ones because I like a round catch light in the eye. To me, that's just rubbish. I don't use a softbox to get the catch light in a model's eye. I've talked about this before with you. It's such a small deal that it doesn't really matter to me. The catch light is irrelevant to me in most cases, as long as it's there. Catch lights are useful, and I'm going to do a video on catch lights in the future to talk a lot more about them and the reasons why we should think about catch lights in the eyes. But for this video, basically speaking, a round softbox and a square softbox are going to give you almost the same result. There's tiny differences with the drop off on the edges and stuff. There are very few differences between round and square softboxes. I tend to use a large octabox for most of the stuff I do, and you'll see when we do the shoot later on in this video how I can use that large softbox to give me beautiful, soft overall light. That's generally my go-to in the studio, and I use it outdoors as well. I do like rectangular softboxes, even though at the moment I don't have one. The advantage of a rectangular softbox is that I can have it vertical to give me a slightly narrower spread of light, or I can turn it horizontally, which will wrap around my subject a little bit more. It suits for various different face types, I find, and those subtle differences do make a difference. But basically speaking, a softbox is a softbox is a softbox. It's there to make your light soft and attractive on your subject. Here we've got two round softboxes, or almost round. Softboxes are very rarely round. They tend to have 8 sides or 16 sides or whatever. It really doesn't make a lot of difference. The difference between these two obviously is the size. So if I have this large 120 centimetre softbox in close to my subject, it gives me a really soft light. But I can also use it maybe 2 or 3 metres away, and it still maintains a relatively soft light because of the size of it. The small one gives me a little bit more punchy light. The light spread is pretty much exactly the same, but the softness of the light will vary. I can have this one in close to my subject, which will give me pretty much the same light as the large one further back. So the physics says that the softness of the light, or the size of the light source, only matters depending on the distance from the subject. So we can create the same light with the large one as we can with the soft one, we just have to move it further back. Also, when we move it further back, obviously the power of the flash diminishes, so we need to compensate for that too. You've seen that in some of my other videos. Now, with these other ones on the other side, we've got a strip box here, which will give us a little bit taller, slimmer spread of light. Not appreciably much, but the further back we have the strip box, the more it tends to light in the vertical plane. So we can use it for edge lights. We can use it so that we get a full coverage from head to toe on our subject, particularly if we've got it as an edge light as it is here. The closer we get in, the more it tends to just work as a softbox. It's softer in the vertical than it is in the horizontal, which can be an advantage in some cases. Again, this is very subtle. We can move that light in closer to our subject if we're using it as a main light, and it will tend to slim down the face a little bit. Or we can use it as a horizontal light, which gives us softness in the horizontal, but a slightly harder light in the vertical. And that will tend to make our face look a little bit fuller and light a little bit more fully around the subject. So there are various slight differences between them. Now you'll notice that my strip box has a grid on it. The sole purpose of the grid is to contain the light so that it doesn't spread so far. The pattern of light is very similar. It's just a little bit more concentrated. It doesn't alter the softness of the softbox because we know the softness of the light is determined by the size of the light source in relation to your subject. So putting a grid on here doesn't change the size of that light source. It's exactly the same softness with the grid as without the grid. The square softbox in behind me is just a convenient size for me to use, particularly if I use multiple softboxes to light a face. It's smaller, I can position it a little bit more easily. I can get in closer to it so I can get more frontal light onto my subject if I'm doing beauty light. I can place one above or one below, which is a little bit more difficult with the larger softboxes. But basically, the spread of light that you get from all of these softboxes is going to be very similar. Not exactly the same, but very similar. As I said before, I'm going to be doing a model shoot at the end of this video to show you the various differences with these softboxes, which you'll note when the time comes aren't very obvious. They're very similar, all of these different shapes. Now you'll probably hear other photographers say the exact opposite. That's fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinions, but after working with softboxes for 42, 45 years, this is the conclusions that I've come to. I use whatever softbox generally that fits the situation, fits the room I've got to work with, and fits the shape of the face of my subject. Now I want to talk to you about how we trigger our softbox. Now softboxes are generally used off camera. It's very difficult to have a softbox on top of your camera, on your speed light. So we tend to move them away from our camera, which gives us more scope for controlling the light spread, the light direction, all of those sort of things, the light quality. So we need some way to trigger that softbox, that flash in the back of the softbox, to synchronize with our camera shutter. In the old days, we used a lead. We used a cable that went from the camera to the flash, and it fired in synchronization with the camera shutter, which worked fine. It just restricted you a little bit to the distance you could be away from your flash. And sometimes they're a little bit less reliable. It's still possible to do that. Some cameras have a PC socket that you can plug that lead into. You can also get little accessories that fit on your hot shoe with a PC socket in that you can run that lead straight into your camera. I don't see too many photographers doing that nowadays. Another way that we can trigger our flash is with an infrared beam. A lot of cameras or flashes will emit an infrared beam. That beam hits the flash and allows the flash to fire at the same time as the shutter goes off. Now, the problem with infrared is that it needs to be line of sight. You need to be able to see your infrared sensor on your flash from your camera position, pretty much. So it's not quite as versatile as using some of the other methods. The third method that you can do is to use your flash on your camera as a master. The master will send a signal to your flash to fire at the same time as your shutter. I haven't got that. I haven't got that facility on my camera, so it's not something that I've done before, but a lot of photographers do. I noticed that it's a little bit complicated to set up. I don't like complication. I like simple things that are going to work. Another way that we can do it, and the way that most of us do it nowadays, is that we use a radio trigger. We have these units, these little radio triggers. There are a number of different ones available that will fit onto your hot shoe on your camera, and that will allow you to fire your flash in synchronization with your shutter. I've got a number of different triggers, different styles of triggers that I use to fire my flashes, but the one I use the most is this one. This is a Yongnuo RF603. I've been using these for probably the past 7 or 8 years. The big advantage for me is that they're reliable and they're cheap. These cost, in Australia, they cost about $25, $30 each, so I can purchase a lot of them. I do workshops and I do classes, and I need to distribute these to my students when we're shooting in the studio or when we're shooting outdoors. I don't want to be paying $500 for a unit, so these things are quite cheap. I've got about 20 of them or so, and very rarely have they ever failed. There is one problem with these triggers though. When I'm shooting with a slow shutter speed, I'm trying to mix flash with ambient light or flash with LED light. These things don't like doing that. So in that case, I tend to switch to another trigger, a more expensive trigger that's going to do a better job for me. This is the one that I use most often in those situations. This is a Niwa trigger. I don't know what model it is, but any Niwa trigger is going to be able to do this for you. Now, this trigger is a little bit more complicated than my other one. I'm going to explain the 603 use in a little while. This trigger allows you to set up different channels and different groups of flashes so that you can alter the power of each of them individually. I've never really had the need for that. Actually, I did once. I did need that various different channel settings when I did a workshop in a large hall and we were all using the same types of triggers. So I needed to put some sets on different channels and that worked amazingly well. But my 603s do that, no problem. This one's a little bit more complicated. My brain doesn't like complication, but being a Niwa one is quite much more simple than a lot of the others around. So this is the one I use sometimes. The other ones I use pretty much all the time. Now, if you are using longer shutter speeds or slower shutter speeds, and you want to trigger a couple of flashes at different times, there is a way that you can do it with these triggers, specifically this Niwa trigger. I'm sure others will do it as well. Every time you push the fire button on here, it will fire your flash. So you can have 3 or 4 different flashes firing at different times and setting them off just with a push button on here. But that's not going to be a way to trigger your flash in synchronization with your shutter. It's a slow shutter technique. Another thing you can do is just to push the button on the back of your flash. You can just push that as many times as you like with a slow shutter speed, just the same, so that you can get multiple different flashes in the one. You saw my last video about light painting with flash. That's exactly what I was doing. I was simply pushing the button on the back of the flash to fire it each time using a 15-second or 30-second shutter speed. So when I'm using my 603 trigger, I simply stick it on top of the camera hot shoe. Once it's attached, I can switch it on and it's going to work. As soon as I press the shutter on my camera, my flash is going to fire. Now, if I'm using a Yongnuo flash, which I do most often, I love working with the Yongnuo 560 Mark IVs. Most of my flashes are that model. I've got probably 5 or 6. They have one built in because it's the same brand as this. And as soon as I switch this on, switch the flash on, the flashes fire, no problem. If I had a different brand flash, I can put another one of these triggers on the bottom of the flash and it will fire that flash, be it a Canon or a Nikon or whatever. It will fire those different brands, which is another big advantage of these triggers, because when you buy a Yongnuo trigger, you buy a Godox trigger, you buy a Profoto trigger, you're often locking yourself in to that system and they don't like working with other flashes. The Niwas and the Godoxes now are becoming cross-compatible, so that's a good thing. You're not locking yourself into one of those. But a lot of the other brands you lock yourself in and it makes it difficult to use off-brand flashes. Now I have various different flashes. I have Niwa flashes, I have Yongnuo flashes, I have Godox flashes. With my strobes, I've got Nice Photo, I've got Godox, I've got Metz, I've got a whole range of different brands. These 603s will fire all of them, no problem. With a strobe, you just get a little lead that comes with the trigger, you plug it into the strobe, and this will fire automatically. So it's a big advantage. The other advantage of having these Yongnuo triggers is that I can put this one on my camera, it will fire my flash. I can put a second one on top of here, because it's got a hot shoe on it, and use it as a remote shutter. So I can plug the top one into the side of my camera, and that allows me to use a third one to fire my remote shutter. So if I'm working alone at night and I want to do some light painting or something like that, I can use them as a remote shutter as well as my flash trigger. So that's another big advantage. So you can choose any sort of triggers that you want, but basically the radio trigger will send a radio signal to your flash and fire your flash in synchronization with your camera. There is another way that we can use our cameras with our flashes and trigger them in synchronization, and that's using them as an optical slave. Most speed lights and most studio lights or strobes will have an optical sensor. So as soon as they see another flash go off, they will fire at the same time. It's amazing technology to have this happen within 100th of a second, but it works time and time again. So you only really need one trigger and one flash. Once it fires, all of the other lights in the set will fire at the same time. And it works amazingly well. This is the way that I generally work in the studio. I'll have one Yongnuo speed light on a stand. This trigger will fire that speed light, and that optical signal sets off all of my other strobes. It makes it so much easier to get everything done. Now, it may be nice to be able to alter the power of each of my flashes, putting them in different groups and stuff like that. But I find it takes me just the same amount of time to walk over and change the power on the flash as it does to change on the trigger. And again, it's simpler. So you can choose to trigger your flashes in a number of different ways, or you can combine all of these different ways together. If you use a different method, let me know in the comments. If you prefer one of these methods, let me know in the comments. You may like things that are a bit more complicated, but as long as it's reliable and it works, that's the main thing. And that method that I mentioned to you about using my Yongnuo flash to fire from this radio trigger and then setting all the other ones off with an optical slave is how I'm going to do this shoot. I'm going to fire all my flashes, whether I use 1, 2, 3 or 4, all with that system. One flash that's triggered with the radio signal, and all of the rest will work on the optical slave. Here we are in the studio. I'm going to show you the differences between all these different shapes and sizes of softbox. Now, I can't show you every softbox that I've got, it would take forever, but we've got these 4 basic softboxes. We've got the large 120 centimetre octabox, we've got the small 65 centimetre, we've got our square one, and we've got the strip box. So what I'm going to do to try and standardise this stuff is I'm going to place them at the same distance and the same position for each of the shots that we do. I'm going to vary the pose on our model, Shay, just because we want to get nice shots. But you'll see that there's very little difference between all of them, particularly with the headshots when we're in close. We're going to do headshots with one light, then we're going to do a full length shot with the same light, just to show you as we go through. And you can compare them as we go, or I can compare them in the video later on. Now, when we trigger these lights, we're going to do it in the way that I told you previously. I'll be using this speed light here simply to fire from my trigger on my camera, and then all of these lights will fire from their light slave. They all have light slaves that will sense any flash that happens, and they'll all trigger in synchronisation with my shutter. So that's how we're going to do it. Now, pretty much everything we shoot today is just going to have one softbox in it. So don't think that you need a whole range of different lights to get amazing images. We're going to get some great images today of Shay, but we're only using a single light in every shot that we shoot. Of course, if we use constant light or LED lights in the back of these softboxes, we don't need to worry about triggers. Because the light's on constantly, we can just fire away with our cameras and we don't need to worry about the synchronisation issue. Now, the lighting on our model is pretty much a combination of the position of the light and the pose that she's in. There's a plethora of permutations. Andrew asked me to say that, but there's a lot of different ways you can do this stuff. So it does depend on your model's position and the light position together. So we're going to run through a few different poses. You'll see what we're going to do, and here we go. We're starting out with the large softbox, the 120 centimetre octabox. I'll take a few shots of Shay. We're going to do the head shots first, and then we'll get onto some full length shots after that. Okay, Shay, yep, that's it, lovely. Just turn your shoulders a little bit away, yep, and your face back to that shoulder, and eyes to me. Yeah, terrific. Okay, I've got to try not to say yeah too many times. Lovely, just a little tilt on that head. Yeah, that's it, good. Wonderful, yeah. All right, that's terrific. Now that's just the single softbox, that large softbox. We could fill in on the shadow side of Shay with a reflector, but there's no real need to do that. Don't think that everything you shoot's got to have perfect detail everywhere. I like that dark shadow, the dramatic look of that light. And remember, this is the softest light we're using. So some of the other lights are going to look a little bit more dramatic. Okay, lovely. Now we're going to shoot you over here, please. Lovely, yes, perfect. Shay knows how to do things. I'm just going to do a 3/4 length first. Yep. And of course, because my light is further away from Shay, I'm going to have to increase my exposure. Just one stop should be enough. But I'm going to do that consistently through the day, just to make sure that we've got the standardized exposure on all these shots. Lovely. Yeah. Terrific. Sit down. That's it. Okay. Lovely. Here we go. Maybe stand with your feet apart a little bit. Weight on one foot. Yeah. Great. That's it. And your chin down just a little. Yeah. Okay. Great stuff. Now that's my standard light that I use for most of the shots that I do here in the studio with my clients, because it's a very flattering light. Now we're going to change to a smaller round softbox, and you'll see the slight difference that makes. So now we're switching to the smaller softbox. You'll notice that there's very little difference between the small one and the large one in the shots that we do. Okay, wonderful Shay. You see Shay's posture is just perfect. She just sits up nice and tall. Yes, lovely. Okay, I've told Shay not to smile, but everything I say makes her smile. Wonderful. Just turn that face around a little bit more. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's great. Terrific. Might move in a little bit closer and just do a nice headshot of Shay. Lovely. There we go. See, she's looking at me a bit suspiciously now because I started to come into her comfort zone. Now we're going to do a full length shot of Shay, and you'll see the difference that makes. Okay, that's great, Shay. Eyes to me. Yeah, here we go. Wonderful. We do a half length shot. Here we go. Okay, that's good. One more, yeah. Terrific. Okay, so you can see that even though that small softbox is small, the coverage is still adequate to cover Shay's whole body. There are tiny differences in there. You might notice a little bit of difference in the quality of the light on Shay's face, but overall it's very similar to the large softbox. Don't make any rude gestures in the background. So now we've switched to a strip box. That's not easy to say. Now we've switched to a strip box. It's going to give us a bit more of a vertical light, softer light in the vertical, a bit more hard in the horizontal. But when you look at these shots, they're going to be very similar to the two lights that we've already used. We're going to start off using the strip box in a vertical formation. Then we're going to turn it around 90 degrees so we get that horizontal formation. That will give us a little bit more wraparound light. As I've mentioned earlier in the video, you'll see the difference when we do it. We're trying to get a serious expression from the girl. I'll put you out in the corridor if you don't behave yourself. Okay, so turn the face towards the light. Yeah, okay, lovely. Eyes to me. Here we go. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, terrific. Once again, come in a little bit closer. Okay, yeah. Wonderful. That looks really cool. Now we're going to turn that strip box horizontally. My beautiful assistant here, Greg, has done that for me. A little bit higher, Greg, for me. Yep. Here we go, Shay. Now we've got this light the same distance, same power, and there'll be a subtle difference between the two. I'll put two up on the screen for you to have a look at. Move in a little bit closer. Lovely. Okay. Terrific. You can see the subtle differences between these two shots. One shot with the horizontal strip box, the other one shot with the vertical one. But in reality, they're very similar. Now we're going to do some full-length shots with the strip box. Here we go, Shay. Full-length shot of Shay with the strip box. Lovely. Yeah. That's cool. Maybe round to the side a little bit more. Turn your waist so your shoulders go around that. Yep, that's it. Eyes to me. Wonderful. Move in for a 3/4 shot. Yeah. Here we are. Okay. Terrific. Now we're going to turn it around horizontally so that you've got another option. Here we go. Now, Greg knows that when we turn it horizontally, we need to lift up the light stand a little bit to make sure that that light's coming down onto Shay's face, so it looks a bit more natural. There we go. Okay. Yes, no, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, wonderful shape. Terrific. Just turn you around away from the light. Yep, that's it. Yes. Here we go. Okay. Great. Now, obviously, because we've got a horizontal shaped light here, we're going to get a little bit of fall off down towards Shay's feet. But it's not really noticeable all that much, even though we're using that strip box in the horizontal position. Again, I keep saying this over and over, it's very similar to all of the other softboxes. The last option we're going to do is this 600 centimetre square softbox. Now there are slight advantages of using a square softbox because if I want to get the light as frontal as possible, I can get right in close to the side of a square softbox because it's got a vertical edge on it. My octabox is a little bit more difficult because I can't really get in close to the centre of the light as easy as this. Also, if I'm using it just above the light for a frontal beauty light, I can get my camera right up just underneath that lower edge of the square softbox. So that allows me to get a little bit more frontal light. With the octabox, I have to have it up higher and I'm just pushing up on the bottom of the circle. So it's a little bit advantageous in that area, but you'll notice when I do these shots, it's going to look very similar to every other shape and every other size of softbox that I've shown you today. Okay, so yep, turn that face, you know the drill by now. All right, here we go, yeah. Lovely, yep. Maybe pull a bit of hair over your shoulder, a bit of hair forward. Yeah, that's it, great. Okay, lovely. I'll move in a bit closer. Here we go. Yeah, lovely. Once more, yep. Turn that face around a little bit further still. Eyes to me, yeah. Great. Now you'll notice when I get in and do a close-up headshot of Shay, I'm not getting in too close. About 2 meters is as close as I ever get to my model or my client, because if I get too close, they start to panic a little bit. I'm coming into their comfort zone and they feel a little bit uncertain about it, and that comes through straight in their eyes. I'd much rather stand a little bit further back and zoom in to get the shot I want, rather than get in too close, because it's going to distort her as well if I get in too close, and Shay doesn't want to be distorted. So I shoot from that distance of about 2 meters, even if I want a straight headshot. If I want to crop in to her face, I'll still do the same thing and just crop in later on. Now we're going to do the full length shot with our square softbox. Okay, here we go, Shay, full length, lovely. 3/4 length, yep. Shay knows to turn her face towards that light so that we get that beautiful short side lighting on her. Great. Can you turn around to face this way? Again, turn your shoulders, yeah. And eyes to me, yeah. That's great. Come in for a half length. Here we go. Terrific. Okay, that's terrific. Just as a little bit extra here, we're going to get Greg to hold a reflector in close to Shay, just to bounce a bit of light back up into those shadow areas, just to show you the difference that makes. Yep, that's it. That's good. In a little bit closer.
Am I facing
Yeah.
the light?
Yes, you're just facing the light. Yep, that's it. Okay. Now you can see where Greg's holding that reflector. We want him to hold it just out of frame if we can. Greg likes to get into the shot so that he's got his own personality in there, but we don't want to get him in too close because we don't want that reflector to show. So he's just going to be just outside. It's going to bounce a little bit of light back into those shadows. Okay, here we go. Do a shot with Greg in it. And then we're moving closer. Here we go. Lovely. And we're going to do 2 shots, one without the reflector and one with. So just turn it around and face that way. That's it. Okay. Just keep around about the same pose for a Shay. Yep. Okay, that's it. Great. Here we go. Okay. Now we're going to get Greg in with the reflector. Greg, behave yourself. That'll do. Not too close. Not as close as you were before. Back out. Yep. Okay. That's great. Here we go. All right. Wonderful. So you can see the difference there, just bouncing a little bit of light back in there. You don't need anything expensive, this is just a cheap whiteboard from the hardware store. Now, while we've been doing this, and while we've been waiting for Shay to get changed, because she takes ages to get changed, I've noticed something that we might be able to do. If Andrew pans across into the corner of the studio here, I've got my son's lounge over there in the corner, or sofa for those people in those backward countries. We're going to pose Shay inside that sofa area because we think it might make a good background. It wasn't my idea, it was Greg's idea, but we're going to see what we can get with Shay in that background. That's going to be okay. So what we're going to do is get you standing on there. No, we'll get you standing on the front, on the concrete.
I think Greg has too much fun of these.
He does, yes, I know. All right, he's holding it so it's not going to fall, but still stand with your feet on there. The advantage of this is it gets him out of the way and we don't have to worry about what he's doing. Yeah. No, don't stand on there, just stand on there.
Stand on it.
That's okay, that's cool. All right. And I'll just edit Greg's foot out of it later on. Okay, that looks great, Shay. Yeah, no, what you're doing looks great, yeah? Okay, in there like you were before, yeah? That's it, great. Yeah, just pretend to sleep, that's cool, yep. Okay, yeah, love that. This could be a new line in backgrounds that I can sell. That's it, great. Do a wide shot here, just to show people what we're doing. It's a talking sofa. That's it. Shut up, sofa. Behave yourselves. All right, last one, Shay. Yeah, that's it. I said last one, but you know I don't mean it. Can you separate your feet and just lean back into the V of the sofa? Yeah, that's it. Don't worry if it pushes back. Greg's in there. All right. Yeah, that's lovely. Good stuff. Yeah, just tilt your head over this way a little bit more. Yeah, that's it. Great. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so talk about a bonus for the video. You've got a system now that you can shoot with a background of a sofa. All you've got to do is tilt it up. So you don't have to spend a lot of money on a background. Just get a sofa, tilt it upwards, and there you go. Okay, you guys can come out now. So you can see it doesn't really matter what shape or size your softbox is. The results that you get from them are very similar. You only need one softbox and you can get a variety of different results. It's just a matter of working the angle of your softbox with the pose of your model, and that makes the difference. So we've got one more of these softbox videos to go. We're going to do outdoor softbox lighting. That'll be coming in a few weeks' time. So I'll see you then.